All right, we're here at the Christian Moerlein Lager House, right next to beautiful Great American Ballpark, on Collaboration Day. We have Kevin Moreland from Triple Digit and Listermann Brewing, and Richard Dube, our favorite French Canadian, from Christian Moerlein Lager House. Gentlemen, why don't you start off telling me a little bit about the beer that you guys are making?
Yeah, beer name we just came up with yesterday, Saigon Sap.
Saigon Sap.
Saigon Sap. It's got a lot of things going on. Briefly, I'll talk about just the history behind how this collaboration came about. We, as many of you guys know out there, a lot of the local breweries meet often, and we always are at different events together. And me and Richard was constantly running into each other, and I just thought, I think that the marriage between the unique things and the outside the box thinking that we do over at Listermann Triple Digit would marry well with the beer collaboration between Richard Dube and his staff at Moreland Lager House. The authentic, traditional, old world kind of brewing heritage that they can bring to the table. How do I want to put this? The scientific background that they like to bring to the table. They're really on top of their game. So I think that just in general, we came up with this concept together of saying, hey, I really think that we can grab a little bit of different consumer from both of us here locally to really do a beer together and really get people to say, wow, this is really unique.
Really, the idea was to put together two major, I would almost say, philosophy of brewing, to put together and come up with something very, very unique.
Yeah. And
I think that's what we came up with. As you just mentioned earlier, we finally came up with a name yesterday.
Yeah.
It's called Saigon Sap, S-A-P, and a little bit the story about that is that Saigon is because we will be using Saigon cinnamon, which is totally different than from I would say the classic cinnamon that is more hot and spicy when it's used in larger quantity. This one is beautiful, mild, sweet almost, and sap comes from actually, it's the name or partial name of a type of apple called wine sap, because we are using apple cider, unfermented apple cider, that comes from from Hebron, correct?
Yeah,
from Hebron,
local
farmer from a local orchard, and some of that cider contains wine sap apple. So that's a little bit where it came from.
That was a lot of brainstorming yesterday.
A lot of beer drinking?
Yes,
of course.
Yes.
Of course.
And I'll throw a little bit in there is I always wanted to do collaborations with breweries that have either different brewing techniques or the way they go about their marketing and the way they just brew beers in general. I think that that's true collaboration. I think if I did the same styles as Richard does here at the Lager House, I just don't think it would be unique enough for Cincinnati beer drinkers. I think even outside the realm of that. So I think when Richard was like, we really got to do a decoction mash on this lager, and I'm like, that sounds really cool. So when that's what he brought to the table. I'm like, all right. So I was like, why don't we take, I never see too many people do this, but we actually took a nice malty, chocolatey brown ale, and we formulated those two styles together. We did this decoction mash. And Richard will talk a little bit more about the decoction side of it, but just for the base alone, we tasted the first runnings. We're actually brewing right now.
Yeah.
We tasted the first runnings. Really nice chocolatey. You get this kind of caramel toffee note, and then with the the local cider that we're going to infuse into it, and the Saigon aroma and characteristics that's going to bring to the table, people are just going to say, "Wow." I really wanted to call this beer "Wow," but it didn't go over. Yeah.
No, interesting enough, you mentioned earlier that you have never worked with the chocolate wheat.
Yeah.
So we have chocolate wheat in there. We have white wheat. We have some chocolate malt as well. with a base of Turo. And the
Some
first
victory.
run,
Some victory.
some victory, you're
Yeah,
correct. But you know, the beauty was that the first running sometimes could be harsh a little bit,
Yeah.
can be a little bit astringent when you use those kind of darker malt.
Yeah.
But with what we use, we end up with something super duper smooth,
Very nice.
very chocolatey,
Yeah.
without the astringency of it. So I'm very, very excited. And if I may, I'm going to point out about what we've done with the decoction.
Yeah.
Decoction, for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's a very traditional brewing technique. Whereas you take about, in our case this morning, we took about 30% of the entire grist bill, and we went through a protein rest, we went through a saccharification, and then we moved that back into the cooker, and we brought that to boil temperature, and we reintroduced that into the other 70% of the grist bill to help us to ramp up to saccharification. What it gives that very depth dimension of malt that malt alone doesn't impart. And I'm a firm believer of decoction. Yesterday I was doing another decoction, my Scotch Wee
Very good.
for those who remember from last year, my PD Wee is going to be back in December. But that's another decoction, and it really truly brings another dimension. And I think that we can mention that there's not a lot of people that are equipped to make a proper decoction. So going back to why Kevin and I, we sat together and said, God, let's do something. It's partially, you know, creativity, scientific approach, but also the equipment that we could use and come up with something really, really unique.
It's going to be out to the market, so talk to your local bars and restaurants. So we'll be taking it out to the market, and you also have it at the Moerlein Lager House on draft, and also at the tap room. Am I correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
So,
yeah, we're going to bring it.
So look for it down there. Make sure we catch Saigon Sap. When can we look for it probably to go on?
I want to say, okay, so today, first brew, tomorrow, second brew, call it, so we're going to be November 1st, November 13th, probably the end of November, beginning, I think that our original date was November 28th. It's going to be awfully close to that.
So
End of November, beginning of December, it's going to be out there.
So all of our fans can look for a kick-ass party at the Moreland.
Oh, you can bet. You bet. We're going to have a special tapping.
All right.
Thank you, Kev. Cheers.